Hi everyone, my name is Marc Rochon. I'm the Director of Analytics here at Periscope. I think I met many of you, but thanks for everyone for coming. Today we're going to talk about data and kind of where it's come and the evolution it's gone through, especially in the last 25 years, which is incredible when you take a step back and look at it. We're not going to focus on sales and reporting. We're actually going to pivot into more of the creative uses for data. So what are people doing? What are interesting ways people are incorporating data into campaigns? So we'll go through a little bit of background, and then we'll get to that in the latter half. So we'll go through, what is data? How do you define it? What is it? How is it made? Where is it created? We'll start to categorize different types of data and information, and then a little bit of understanding of where the heck is it stored? Where is it found? How do I get at it? And then finally, where we'll spend the most time is on what are some interesting things people are doing using data. So many of you, if you guys think about data, the first thing that jumps out of your head is probably, we're talking about numbers here. You might even think about spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets. I hate those. I don't want to use those. I don't really, it's just a bunch of crap in there. You might even you might go more to like sales data. There's a lot of transactions, a lot of sales. Clients give us sales data all the time, and that's the type of data that we look at. You might think of more the reporting aspects because that's part of our daily job, especially on the media side of things. How many impressions did we get? How many clicks? How many did we drive revenue? Did we drive sales? Some of you might think when you think of data, might think of Google Analytics, which is a wealth of information in there, more about behavioral data, click-through data, understanding what people are doing online. You might even be thinking about social listening, which is still relatively new, but there's a lot of data information that's capturing every time someone does anything on anything social. But really the simplest definition is data is just unprocessed or raw information. So data itself doesn't tell us much. It doesn't really give us anything. It's just raw information, but it's not even information yet. So if you think about it this way, what you need to do to get from data to information is you need to organize it. You need to organize data, you need to process it, you need to present it, and you have to give it context. So data is nothing until it's structured a certain way. But really what you're trying to get to is to go beyond just information. Otherwise, you're just reporting and giving numbers and trends. You're trying to get to the top of that pyramid, which is more of an understanding of what's happening. So that's really kind of the steps we go through. The data itself does nothing until we analyze it and organize it, and then we're trying to find something in there that is really interesting that makes us better and smarter. So data has evolved a lot, especially in the last 25 years. I'm sure you guys can know why. But it really started, the first trace of data was almost 20,000 years ago when people found this bone that had marked etches in an organized fashion, and they hypothesized that it was a way of counting, the first way of counting certain things. So that's a long time ago. There's also another hypothesis that it was just used for grip, but who knows? Really then, there's nothing, not a lot happened in the next 20,000 years. Well, actually a lot happened. We got over that hunter-gatherer phase and the agricultural revolution and all that. But from a data standpoint, not a lot happened until really the 1800s. There's one example before that that I really like. Edmund Halley read a bunch of reports and history around comets and comet sightings. There was one in 1531. There's another one in 1607. There's another one in 1687. And he was reading these reports in the early 1700s and came up with the hypothesis that this was actually a comet, the same comet coming over and over, and he guessed that it would come back in 1758, and sure enough it did. The comet, Halley's Comet, was named after him. So that's a good example of data, just 3 data points. All it is 3 data points until you look at it, you think about it, and then you get some knowledge out of it. So that's a good example of the simplest data forms and how you were able to get from data to information to knowledge. But then in the 1800s, that's where we started having census data and really starting to capture and structure different types of data. Started to learn more statistical analysis, looking at mortality rates and how long people live. So there's starting to be a lot more around that. And then really the 60s, 70s, 80s is where things really ramped up. So commercial computers and then personal computers. We had our first data center, which the government had. But really, it didn't really take off until the 90s, obviously, because of the internet. In the early 90s, that took off, and then Google in the later 90s organizing and structuring all this information. And then we had more innovations in data storage, so more and more data being stored. In the 2000s, it increased again and again with social media. So instead of the publishers putting content out there, it's all the people who started putting that information out there. Mobile increased the amount of data even more, and GPS as well. So now we have location data. And then in the last few years, it keeps ramping up. All of these are growing exponentially. More mobile usage. There's machine learning creating data out of new and different things, which we'll get into a little bit. But they say that 90% of the data was created in the last 2 years. So if you look at all of this data, it really, you couldn't even map it out because it just keeps growing and growing exponentially. So a lot of this data is relatively new. So what are the different types of data? The simplest and one of the ones that we first think about is transactions. So there's a lot of data in the world that used to be mostly transactional. So the exchange of information between one person and the next. I give you something, usually money. You give me something back, usually some type of product or service. All that data is captured, and that's a significant amount of the data out there. Did I lose my? All right. And those are some sweet stock photos of what happens when you Google transactions. One of them is a handshake, so that's cool. But we're able to go beyond just the actual point of sale, that transaction that happens now mostly because of the internet. A lot of these actions are web driven. So before you make a purchase, you search something on the internet, you go through websites, you read reviews, you get all this information. All of that is now trackable. So we're able to understand, to gain a better understanding of the behaviors that went into making that purchase. So this continues to grow and grow. We're getting better at understanding this data. We're getting better at structuring this information. Another data category is time, which gives more context to all of that other information. So it's a critical data point. Down to the second, we were able to add context. We're able to look at things like seasonality, look at trends over time. So that's very important. And location, as I spoke about briefly, is a really, really important one too. And this is still relatively new. It's based off satellite data. I don't know how many people know exactly how it works, but basically you take 3 satellites that are 20,000 kilometers in the sky, and each of them knows how far away it is from you. That's all it knows. It doesn't know where you are. It only knows how far away it is. So if you add a second one, you're able to narrow it in. If you add a third, triangulation, it's called, it can pinpoint exactly where you are. So there's 3 satellites tracking you. It can tell you where you are. If you have more, it gives you more precision. And then the modern phones use other Wi-Fi signals and other things, but it's based off the GPS satellite data. So that's a lot already. So all of this, we're understanding purchase behaviors. We're able to understand differences from one location to the next, very granular. And that's a lot. But there's still a lot more recent data that's still relatively new. So now not only those clicks and those purchases, but also if we're typing something, we're able to analyze that. So we use NetBase for our social listening tool, but it actually understands context of sentences. It's able to translate that into data. So is it positive comment, negative? So there's a lot of great examples of that. And it's really, really smart. And machine learning algorithms are helping to make them even better. So a good example, it can differentiate between bad being bad and ass being bad, but badass is good. So it can know and understand context of these sentences and these sentence structures. Sound is another one that we don't think a lot of, but from Google searches now to voice searches, that again, machine learning has enabled a lot more of this. Shazam was way ahead of its time, but basically it takes a song and it translates it into data, into time and frequency of different types of sounds, and creates a chart out of a sound and compares that to a whole database of these songs, and it's able to know exactly what song it is based off of the data in seconds. So pretty incredible, but now we're capturing sound data. Images is also still relatively new, but we're training these algorithms and giving them inputs, and they're learning. So if I wrote an algorithm and gave it 1,000 pictures of hot dogs and then gave it another 1,000 pictures of not hot dogs, and I put a new one in, it would be able to tell me, is it a hot dog or not? And they're not perfect, but they're getting better and better and better. You're seeing, even on your iPhone, you might see, it recognizes people now. You can look at all your pictures of a certain friend. It's picking up these facial cues, which is increasing more and more data. And then movement as well. So it's just a function of time and place. If we know when something was here, when something's there, you can get the movement. But there's also evolving technology and sensors and things like that that you're able to bounce waves off things and understand where they are and how are they moving. So more and more data coming. So that's kind of the summary. There's also probably some other categories and other ways of doing it, but that's the gist of it. That's a lot of data that we have access to and we could tap into when we're thinking about ideas for our clients. So now I'll just go quickly over storing data, just more educational. So a lot of people talk about CRM. This is really just a database at the customer level that our clients, a lot of them have. So it could be leads, it could be actual customers, but all this data on those customers is stored in one central place. We should be understanding which of our clients have it. If not, how do we help them build one for them? But there's a lot of wealth of information that we are leveraging today on a lot of our clients in their CRM. DMP is a data management platform. It's bigger than that because it includes all digital data. It's based off device IDs, and it can connect across multiple devices. But you think every single touch point you have on your phone, on the internet connects, and now we can get all of that, the action data and all that behavioral data on people. So a lot of our clients don't have this, but more and more people do, and more clients are building this. And then just broadly, data warehouse. All of our clients have one to some degree, and they're varying sophistication, but basically they have a central location where all of their data is being stored. Sometimes we're providing data for that as well, but they have this data. So we should be asking, we should understand, know and understand which clients, what type of data they have today and where they're going next, because that could really change the game of how we approach solving their problems. We also have Periscope Vitals, which is being built now on the second floor, and that'll be coming out right away. But a lot of this data we subscribe to, all type of consumer data, market data, media data. We have a lot of that there. So that'll be reopening on the second floor. If you guys are interested in or have any questions about anything, we have a lot of that data there. There'll be more to come on Vitals as well. So a few examples of how, just very simple examples of how we at Periscope have gotten just a little tidbit of information that got us from information to knowledge, and how we've used that for strategic insight and to build actual strategies for our clients. And for certain pitches, I pulled some out of those because you guys don't see that work all the time. So one is we pitched TaylorMade. Unfortunately, we didn't win the business, but we had some really great ideas. And we uncovered a few insights. One of them was around people, where we interviewed some people. We looked at a lot of survey data, and we're starting to see that every player, no matter how, if they were a scratch golfer, if they're a terrible golfer, there was something around they just wanted to be better than they were last round. So one of the data points we found, there was thousands of questions in this really long survey, but there was one interesting nugget that we pulled out that said 84% of golfers use a new golf ball every single round, which is a lot considering everyone's got used balls in their bag. Golf balls are really expensive. This didn't change if you were a scratch or if you were a higher handicap. You saw that same pattern. So this one data point led to the insight that players want every round to be better than the last one played. So this translated, along with some other insights, to the strategies that led the creative execution. So another one recently, when we were having some conversations with JCPenney, and it was more focused on moms. When you were looking through all the data, the nugget that jumped out was that moms only have 17 minutes to themselves every single day. So this led to the insight that, this combined with the other research we did, led to being a better mom makes you, or being a better woman makes you a better mom. So how do you leverage that 17 minutes and give them something that they want and need to make them a better mom? So there's a couple examples. And this structured data, information, and knowledge is something that I didn't make this up. It's well known, like you're trying to get from point A to B to C. And that's a lot of the work that we do when we do reporting, when we do other types of analysis. But I want to focus the last 13 minutes here on something that the more and more I look, there's not really a way of categorizing it and and structuring it. But there's ways that data is being used today that falls outside of this pyramid. And that's what I want to get into. It's really creative data usage. I don't know exactly how to explain it, so I'm going to show some examples. But one way I was thinking about it is that connection to love. It's a way of using data in ways that change the game for people and for the end consumer. So we'll go through a couple examples here. Some of them you might have seen before. Some of these are Cannes winners, so this is not just fun little data usage. These are things that are winning awards and are really changing the game because they're new, innovative ways of leveraging data.
How do you wrap up a year like 2016? In a year that felt like it was all about our differences, Spotify tuned in to the listening data of its over 100 million users to remind us we're all a little bit weird. We started with an out-of-home campaign that was at once global and highly localized, showing what people listened to during Brexit, Valentine's Day, nights out, and in inappropriate ways. We told 164 unique data stories in the exact neighborhoods where the listeners lived. Then, we spread the message online, showing that it wasn't just our listening habits that were weird, it was the music too. On social, we took a weirdly scientific approach to the year's top hits, like how many dances Drake needed, the year in weird spelling, and the emotional roller coaster that was Bieber's hair. Next, we personalized the campaign to each user with an email recapping their year in listening with stats on who they loved, when they loved it, and a unique playlist with their favorite songs of the year.
So a really, really interesting idea. I think a lot of you guys have probably seen that, but the big thing is that the Spotify platform itself has a lot of information in there. They have all the data on these people. So somehow the creative, the agency, I don't know if it was internal or external, but they were able to look at the data and dive in and tell some really unique and interesting stories. And it was more than just an ad campaign. It went to personalized content through email. So it's just a great example of how this behavioral data was used in unique ways, not just at a personal level, but also at a market level. So what are some interesting things and trends that line up with what else is happening in that specific market? So it was really, really localized, really, really interesting, but all driven on the data that was in that platform itself. So really, really interesting. British Airways, this is from 2014, I think, so it's quite old. Many of you may have seen it, but let's just take a look for those of you who haven't.
What the public saw as magic was actually a carefully orchestrated feat of technology. We mounted an ADS-B antenna on the roof of a nearby building to read live data directly from each aircraft's transponder within 200 kilometers. All aircraft emit radio waves containing their speed, altitude, GPS location, and a call sign. Our antenna was connected to a PC with a custom-built application, which identified the British Airways planes and sent the data to our cloud server that controlled the billboards. We created a virtual trigger zone in the sky that acted like a tripwire, so that when a BA plane entered our trigger zone, within 0.2 seconds we'd cross-reference the registration number with flight data from Heathrow to determine the destination. Cloud altitude data told us if the plane could be seen, and if it could, the information was sent to our billboard, interrupting the current content and playing our ad.
So another great example. I'm just trying to envision who came up with that idea. I don't think it was the person that understood all the technology and understood the satellites, understood even GPS, but it was someone who thought about a campaign and interesting ideas and understood that, or even started to think about, wait, isn't there data on these actual planes? Can I tap into that somehow? And it turns out that you can. It's probably not super easy, but again, this is 4 years ago. I think it's easier and easier to execute on some of these things. So the ideas, the really data-driven and unique ideas don't have to be from a mathematician or someone that really understands the technology. It can come from anyone as long as you think about what data exists and how can we use it. So I thought that was a great example. This is more around the personalized content again. I think this was a CAN Award winner from this year with Lexus.
As advertisers, we know that when you're more relevant, you're more persuasive. And thanks to Facebook, we know more about our customers than ever before, what their interests are, where they live, and even what they drive. Let's say, for example, that you're a CEO who likes architecture and design, or that you're a guy who's really into vinyl. We could use the things that you're interested in to grab your attention in a way that's hyper-relevant to you. This is exactly what we did to launch the Lexus NX on Facebook. The NX is a new kind of crossover, one that proves you don't have to sacrifice style for utility, which led us to our campaign idea, Beyond Utility. It's the difference between a place to sit and a place to sit, an in-flight snack and an in-flight snack. We brought our campaign to life on Facebook in a way that pushed the platform itself beyond utility. And thanks to Facebook, we were able to use data in a way no brand had ever done before, to create over 1,000 unique ads to reach millions of people in a way that mattered to them. Let's say you're a woman in your mid-30s who likes fashion and music. You might see something like this. Now imagine you have the same interests, but you're a man. Now imagine you're that man, but you live in LA. While the result looks effortless, figuring out how to make it all come together took a lot of hard work, sleepless nights, and math. Lots and lots of math. The results speak for themselves.
So another good example, we not only do we know data on our clients and their products, but we actually know a lot about people, about the people in the room here today even. So when we message them, why not give them a message that's leveraging that information, that's personalized for them. So they make it seem like it's a really big deal, but like dynamic creative is getting easier and easier with some of the big technology players. So it's not necessarily creating 1,000 unique ads, it's creating an ad that's flexible based off of their personal needs and the data that we have on them. So our media team is able to execute a lot of these. I think we could do a lot more from a creative standpoint of thinking about those personalized, the personalized messaging based off the information that's just sitting there. So I thought that was a really, really good example and a really good execution of that. Here's another one that gets more into less of the advertising side, more on the experience side, and this is actually Adobe has their Creative Cloud. They also have the analytics and the marketing side of things, which they've now branded as Adobe Experience Manager. But this is showing what you can do with technology to improve the customer experience.
Everybody on the floor! This is a robbery! Don't move! Get down! Now. Don't move! Get down and stay down! You move! The money! Money! Open the phone!
Mr. Johnson? Eric Johnson?
How does she know your name? I don't know.
Your mobile app pinged us when you walked in. Looks like you were on our website and thinking about buying a house.
You moving out, man? I need my space.
You may think you can't afford a new home, but we have some amazing new rates. I could text them to you.
Oh, those are fantastic.
And Mr. Davis?
Yeah, it's me.
Did you click on one of our emails about consolidating your student loans?
Maybe.
Oh, well, we can help you with that too.
Hey, what are you doing? This is a robbery, remember? We gotta go! Come on! Can I lock those rates in on the app?
Well, of course you can, sugar.
Thanks.
So this is all this technology, connecting the dots between all these different data sources on the website and the email and even in store is all doable today. And Adobe is one of the leading players, and there are a lot of our clients are using Adobe for analytics, Some of them are using, they have a DMP, they have their own data management platform called Adobe Audience Manager, I believe. There's also a CMS. So Adobe has all the technology to be able to put things together. I think a lot of our clients are still they're trying to figure out how to connect the dots on this. We can help them to certain degrees. Sometimes just by showing them the type of experience you can give, we can help build those experiences for our clients. We just need to become more aware of what technology is available and truly connect the dots between the different data sources to make that customer experience better for our clients. So I thought that was a good example. I'm going to skip this last one because we don't have a lot of time, but I think Peter actually showed this one when he was doing the cans reel, I believe. But this was a Whirlpool. It was about basically the stat was 1 in 5 students struggle with clean clothes. And then they had a hypothesis, and the reason I like this one is they had a hypothesis that that is somehow correlated with performance at school, and then they had a whole campaign around it. If we give people access to clean clothes, that would improve attendance, improve scores, and then they tracked and measured that throughout. So the idea, the execution was interesting, but I love the fact that someone just had a hypothesis that these two things are correlated, and not only did the idea come out of that, but they also tracked and measured and quantified that throughout. So that's another example which you can check out, find that on the CANS website. So, so overall, just kind of a recap here. Data, when you guys think data, I want you to think it's more than just numbers. It's more than just measuring things and looking at trends and reporting. It's more than just validating results. So a lot of times we jump to reporting and trying to see, did that work? Did we improve the numbers? Did we get the sales? It's more than that, and it could be used throughout the entire execution we do for our clients. So the key takeaways, everything can create data. You saw it's more than just transactional. It's more than just website data, more than social listening. Everything is creating data now, everything from images and text and movement, and we can leverage that data in interesting ways. Data can also lead to a human insight, which we saw a little bit of, but I think working with our strategy group, working with our analytics teams, we can start to push the boundaries a little bit of how we uncover some of these insights using facts. And then for the rest of you more in this building, think about data that surrounds us. When we're coming up with ideas, don't just think about right to execution. Think about the possibility that the data that surrounds us could create and how we can leverage that to do some really cool things in interesting ways. So finally, I know you guys, a lot of you have heard, algorithms don't understand love, and I still believe that. There's no way that data and the algorithms just figure it out. But as you saw in the examples, there is a creative layer to it that really can build upon it. So even though algorithms don't understand love, they can be used in really, really interesting ways to inspire innovative experiences that people do love. So it can play a role in the work that we do in our overall mission of doing things people love. That's it. Thank you. I was down to the wire, like to 0-0. Yeah. So if there's any big questions, I can stick around, or you guys can leave and we can answer them here. Does anyone have any specific questions? All right, thanks everyone.
Put that spotlight on her face.